Thank you for being here. My name is Brendan, and I've come here today to talk to you all briefly about New York State's Pollinator Promotion Act. Before we dive into the legislation, I want to quickly start with a quote from Pulitzer Prize-winning ecologist E.O. Wilson. "Insects are the little things that run the world. While you might first think of bugs as pests, they provide many crucial ecosystem functions, including natural pest control, decomposition of organic matter, filling crucial links in the food chain, and the topic of today's discussion, pollination." The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service estimates that insect pollinators add $34 billion in economic value to agricultural crops in the U.S. annually. This equates to about 2% of the total agricultural value of the country. While the largest single contributor to this agricultural pollination is the commercial honeybee, the majority of this still comes as a free service from wild pollinators. It's also important to note that the pollination of wild plants, while more difficult to quantify economically, is similarly impactful. Unfortunately, given their value, it's sad to say that insects are dying. We've seen a 45% decrease in global insect populations over just the last 4 decades, with species going extinct at a rate 8 times faster than mammals, birds, and reptiles. In New York, the Empire State Pollinator Survey of 2022 found that between 38 and 60% of local species are experiencing population decline. Of course, these are all just rough estimates, given that scientists currently only have reliable data for just 1% of known insect species. The Pollinator Promotion Act seeks to mitigate these alarming trends by prioritizing pollinator populations, improving management in pollinator habitats, and promoting public awareness of pollinators in New York. Crucially, the bill also tries to turn state-managed lands into a safe haven for pollinator populations under threat. We've organized the bills of the legislation into 3 key areas of focus: habitat composition, our state-managed lands providing adequate pollinator resources using native vegetation; habitat management, how are mowing and pesticide use impacting pollinator populations; and finally, public awareness. Do people want to help pollinators and know how to do so? Starting off, having the right plants in the right places is important, as pollinators rely on proper vegetation for food, both in terms of nectar and the leaves enjoyed by larvae, as well as shelter. When you first think of a pollinator, you might imagine a bee hive high up in a tree. In actuality, most North American bees and other pollinator insects live in solitary nests in the ground. Denser grasses and flowering plants provide protection both from predators and environmental stressors. Native plants are of particular importance. Adapted to New York's climate, soils, and other conditions, they require much less active management. Also, through thousands of years of coevolution, several native species have evolved to give unique resources to pollinators, including a more efficient nectar pollen transfer and being a host for larvae. Now it's time to talk about mowing. To you all, this picture of the library at the New York Botanical Gardens probably looks lovely. The lawn, kept clean to emphasize the architecture behind it, may be the perfect place for an afternoon walk or even a picnic. Unfortunately, for pollinators, this is a desert. In fact, reducing mowing from 1 to 2 times per month to 1 to 2 times per year or less, so-called low mow management, has been seen to increase pollinator counts up to 8 times. That is because, as mentioned, these pollinators rely on flowering plants for resources, including food and shelter. When these plants are mowed at the earliest stages of development, they're not able to grow up to the point where they can provide these resources. Because of this, even just reducing mowing during times of peak bloom can have a significant impact promoting pollinators. There are many ecological benefits of low mow practices beyond just pollinators. Allowing plants to grow up further and die where they lie puts more organic matter back into the soil, improving soil health. Mowing less requires less labor and fuel, and both of these reduce the net emissions effect on state-managed land. Unfortunately, the practice does not come without any cost. Denser grasslands are harder to provide for relaxation and recreation. Landscaping projects intended to boost native pollinator species will also benefit invasives. And frankly, some people just think that unmowed grasslands are too wild or unclean. Now looking at pesticides, chemicals found in many common pesticides are highly toxic to insect pollinators, with the Wild Animal Initiative estimating that they kill or harm 3.5 quadrillion insects every year in just the United States alone. I know that number is hard to conceptualize, but it's massive. They also stunt growth and cause deformations, especially when larvae are exposed to pesticides, as we can see with our unfortunate black swallowtail friend here. Sublethal exposure can also disrupt crucial behaviors, including flying and reproduction, necessary for both survival and providing pollinator services. Reducing pesticide applications on the more than 11 million acres of land owned and managed by the state can provide protection from the harms of pesticides. It also comes with its own financial incentive. While state departments don't report exactly how much they spend on pesticides every year, the Department of Transportation cites integrated vegetation management as the largest cost in their $220 million maintenance budget, citing herbicides, mowing, and labor as particularly expensive. Taking a look at public awareness, surveys repeatedly show that the vast majority of Americans want to support pollinators, but comparatively few know what they can do to help. The key to bridging this knowledge gap is education at every level through the State University of New York system, public schools, and community workshops. Youth pollinator programs are especially important because the results play out over decades. The Department of Education has found that youth programs both instill a desire to help pollinators as well as sharing the knowledge of how to do so. While the numbers you see here are almost certainly exaggerated, as the survey was completed right after the end of the program, a separate study on employment found that childhood educational experience within conservation was a dominant influence shared among professional conservationists. These programs work over the long term, and they don't even have to be very complicated. In fact, one study found that simply being able to name a few insect species increases lifelong appreciation for those species. How about we give that a try? This is the leafcutter bee. This is the black swallowtail. And as many of you may already know, that is the monarch butterfly. Now that you're all aware of New York's local pollinators, you can care. Let's get back into legislation. Well, the Pollinator Promotion Act aims to increase pollinator populations through better habitat composition, management, and public awareness. It does not do this by creating new laws. Instead, the legislation amends existing laws, namely the Environmental Conservation Law, Highway Law, and Education Law. Across these amendments, the Pollinator Promotion Act suggests many strategies to promote pollinator populations and viability in the state. One that I haven't mentioned specifically is the formation of student faculty committees at SUNY campuses, including members of the professors as well as groundkeeping staff. However, none of these are enforced. Instead, the bill empowers state leaders to design and implement their own initiatives under their jurisdiction, trusting their expertise. Crucially, the bill also provides pollinator landscaping projects access to climate action funding. While the initiatives have not been designed or implemented yet, so we don't know exactly how success will be measured, some physical metrics we can track are population count and species richness, both the number of pollinators seen as well as the number of individual species, native plant coverage, and the portion of state lands adopting pollinator-friendly landscaping, with specific attention paid to public schools, SUNY campuses, and highway verges and medians. If you don't know what a verge is the strip of land on the side of the highway, while the median is in the middle of the highway. On the community side, we can track the number of pollinator-related activities started at schools, as well as recording attendance at community programs and projects on SUNY campuses. In conclusion, we've seen that New York pollinators are in crisis, with both populations and habitat declining rapidly. The Pollinator Promotion Act will serve as a first step to address the problem by improving pollinator habitat through better management and increasing public awareness. While this is not a new law, it empowers state leaders to lead initiatives with mandates and access to funding. With that, thank you all for listening. I want to give a really quick shout out to my team who worked together seamlessly this semester, not just on this presentation, but many other outputs throughout the time. And with that, I'm ready for questions.
Hi, thank you so much for a great presentation. I loved how clear and clean it was and also how informative it was. I'm wondering if you can speak a little to some of the opposition or potential opposition to this legislation. It seems like we know what the issue is. It seems like there is some support for it. Why hasn't this advanced yet?
Yeah, I think first of all, the bill is currently in committee, both in the Assembly and the Senate, so we're waiting on a vote. But I think a large part of the opposition comes down to we don't know exactly how these initiatives are going to be rolled out because in the bill is mostly suggestions and recommendations. And so I think most of the opposition will come with when we see what the plans are actually.
And then just as a follow-up question, why is it presented as a series of suggestions as opposed to a more prescriptive bill, this is what you should do?
We believe that the goal of that is because the bill doesn't actually have any funding or mandates attached to it. And so instead, it's more making pollinators a focus of state leaders as they're planning. So the Commissioner of Transportation has a mandate to consider pollinator health, as well as school campuses, the Department of Education, and other state leaders. This is more putting the idea of protecting pollinators in the minds of state leaders.
Thanks.
Amazing presentation. So a question on the pesticide slide. So I was wondering who would be like the largest, I guess, users of those pesticides. I would think it'd be like for agricultural reasons and stuff like that, but I just wanted that clarification. And how would you sort of account for, let's say, farmer opposition for that use of pesticides?
So this bill, as with anywhere in America, touching agriculture is almost impossible.
Yeah.
So this bill does not consider agricultural pesticide usage. It's more limiting it on state lands, so insects that maybe across the state are at threat of being exposed to pesticides have safe areas. The largest users of pesticides in the state are, of course, agricultural producers, but that's not touched by this bill.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can you go to the slide where you show the, like those amendment of the 3 laws?
Sorry, on the Google Docs, you can just tap to the slide. But here I have to arrow.
Yeah. So you like here you mentioned the reducing mowing that is under the highway law. So I wonder like how highway is related to reducing mowing.
Yeah. So New York has hundreds of thousands of miles of highways. And as you can see here, along the highways, there are both verges, which are on the side, and then many highways have a strip of green in the middle that are medians. And so currently, most of these highways are mowed very short to maintain visibility, but we think these areas are a great space to provide for pollinator habitat, let a little more growth come in. And so specifically, this is an area targeted by the bill.
Okay, thank you very much.